Then I will say hi and a warm welcome to today's webinar. My name is Morten and I'll be the host for today's session. I'm very excited for today's topic and to listen to our speakers share their insights on subscription pricing in the manufacturing space. We will start the session looking at service pricing and subscription business models. We will address questions such as what is a subscription and what are the drivers for manufacturers to consider subscription pricing. Next, we will have a look at subscription pricing in TACT and CPQ and deep dive into related concepts and administration. We will round off the webinar with the Q&A session. So please, if you have any questions, add them in the questions panel. But before we get started, let me introduce you to today's speakers. So our first speaker today, Wolgast, he will start the session, is a senior pricing manager and product manager at TACT with more than 20 years of experience in the pricing of products, software, and services. Prior to joining TACT, Per worked in various roles in the manufacturing industry that were all focused on pricing, product, and product management. After Per, we will have Morten speaking, and Morten Kvist has been with TACT for 5 years, focusing on identifying, analyzing, and understanding our customers' business needs and converting those to complete CPQ solutions. Morten is a product platform development, modularization, and configuration management expert and is going to showcase TACT and subscription pricing functionality today. And now that you know our speakers, I want to thank you again for joining us today. And I will give over to Per, who is going to kick off this session for us today.
Thank you very much, Morten. And I'm really happy to see a lot of participants in this seminar, where we will talk about subscription pricing and how TACT can help manufacturers in the subscription area. Well, let's start with the definition. So what is a subscription? Well, the definition of a subscription, it's a contract between a supplier and a customer for supply of a product or services over an agreed time. And I mean, the key message here is it's a defined product or service and a defined time. I think that's the important thing when we go forward. So is this something new to the manufacturing space? As I guess all of you know, it's not. So service and subscription has always been a significant part of the revenue stream for manufacturing companies. For some companies, it's a complement to their capital goods business, but for many companies, it's actually the most important revenue stream working with in their industry. So it is something that we know a lot about in the manufacturing space and that we have a long experience with. However, it is gaining importance, so that's why we are looking at it at this time. So what are the drivers for subscription and to going for subscription models? Well, there are different drivers from the selling side and from the buying side. From the manufacturers, the selling companies, it is very much around securing a reoccurring revenue, especially if you are selling larger products that you sell with lower frequency, not very often, maybe selling a new plant or a new installation every 10 or 15 years. Then the reoccurring revenue from aftermarket sales and services is a significant part of the revenue stream to secure a long-term positive business. It's also an important tool to secure the aftermarket volume and minimize competition. With subscription on consumables, spare parts and services, it is a very good way to secure that business remains and is not out for competition. And then, of course, an additional important factor is to secure the success of the customer, to help the customer and make sure that the products at the customer is performing, to secure a success for future sales of capital equipment. Drivers from the buying side is very much around reduced risk in different forms. The main thing is to secure a continuous operation for the equipment that the buyer has acquired. But it's also a supplier commitment, because with the service contract or a subscription of services, the buyer is secure that the supplier is with them for the long run. It's also a way to secure that you have a predictable operational cost. In the case that the subscription is not only for services and aftermarket, it's also and it's actually service or a subscription of the product itself. It's reducing the tied up capital, which is one of the main drivers from the buying side to go for a subscription model in relation to a standard buy model. And it's also, in that case, giving a better link between the value, when the value is there and when the costs occur, not having a large initial investment and being forced to manage that capital for a long time. So will everything move to subscription? Sometimes when you read in the press, you get the impression that we will all move into a subscription economy. My take on that, with my experience, is that I don't really believe that. I think the trend to more subscription is here, and it will continue. And I will think there is a lot of room still for additional models and additional products that will go subscription. But I don't believe that everything will go there. It depends a lot, of course, on where you are in the value chain. If you are delivering a product to an end customer or a customer that's using the full function, or if you're delivering a component that goes into a machine that delivers the outcome for a customer. The further back you are in that value chain, the less subscription models will actually work. That said, we see a lot of creativity in this area, and there will probably be a lot of services and subscription models coming further. We also have to take in account that customers might have different preferences, and there might also be some legal limitations on what you can actually do. There is clause in the competition law that sometimes inhibit the possibility to go a full subscription due to competition lockouts, etc. So we talk about subscription pricing here, but very often it's also we also talk about subscription management, and I just want to make sure that we understand the differences when we talk about these two things. So if we look at a typical sales process, the customer will typically, or a user will typically configure a product and a service, price it, and then quote it to a customer. If this quote is, we're lucky, this quote will convert to an order. And in that case, the order will be split into two streams. One for the subscription part that will go into some kind of subscription management that will manage the subscription over time. And another path that will be for the capital equipment that will go into the ERP to be further handled in the supply chain to make sure that physical product ends up at a customer in the agreed form. So what is Tacton doing in this area then to help manufacturers? Well, at Tacton we are focused on configuring highly configurable products, and with highly configurable products, it is difficult to have a predefined service setup. So when the product is highly configured, the services that goes with it also need to be highly configured. And with Tacton, we can create that link to based on the configuration of the main product or the capital product, we can configure the services that goes with that. With that service, customized and tailored service or subscription package, being services or subscription of a product, it's important to do a correct pricing of that. And there are several factors affecting the price. Typically the configuration as such, and different conditions where the product will work under, but also commitments on time and possible ramp-ups or other contracts parameters. And also important is to be able to manage different dynamics in this process. There might be need of giving certain discounts in certain time periods, etc. Important in the sales process is also to get an overview over what this means when it comes to total contract value over a period and to annual contract values over calendar time, etc. All of that is supported in the Tacton CPQ. And to see that, I will now hand over to my colleague Morten, who will show this in some demo. Off to you, Morten.
Thank you, Per. And I should be sharing my screen now. So yes, let's have a look at this new subscription pricing functionality in Tacton CPQ and see how this can support us in building a service offering together with the configuration of a technical product. Right here, I'm logged in as a sales rep into one of our demo environments, the one for the company Tacton, a fictitious truck company. I have already prepared an opportunity and a solution, and as such, we are ready to actually start configuring, building our truck and service package together with the customer. Of course, we would launch the configuration of the truck vehicle. What we want to do here is, of course, create the service offering and build something that is not only tailored to the technical product, but also to the expected usage of the equipment that we are configuring. First, take a look at the bill of material. We know that with Tacton, we get a complete and full bill of material. And as of now, we have not only technical equipment here, so the capital equipment of the truck, but if we scroll all the way to the end here, we'll see that we also have a couple of items here in our configuration result that is actually different services. Right now, these services are based on the configuration, the technical configuration, and of course the default settings that we have in our configuration. But these recommendations and defaults suggested services may of course change as we do changes to our configuration. To make this a bit more clear when we do changes, let's make sure the filter is turned on here so we only see the changes in the bill of material. If now I scroll down here and find the setting for road conditions, so what type of road does the customer expect to drive this truck on, and switch to the setting poor asphalt, we'll see that this has a couple of consequences in the bill of material. Not only will it change some of the physical components, we will have a different technical configuration. It will actually also add by default a additional service item to the list here, a shock absorbers checkup, because this is recommended if you drive the truck on these conditions. If we go a bit further down and change the expected driving distance per year, make it a lot smaller here, you'll see that again, we have a couple of changes in our bill of material. First of all, it will remove the shock absorbers service again, because this is no longer recommended, because even though we are driving on worse road conditions, since we are driving a shorter distance, we don't need this checkup. Because we're driving shorter distance, we also realized that maybe we don't really need to have a 2-month service intervals. Maybe it would be quite enough with maintenance intervals every 3rd month instead. So it will not only be one question, it will be a combination of questions that can affect these services. If I again change all the way to dirt road, we'll see even though we do drive shorter distance, now we actually still do recommend the shock absorbers checkup. Of course, we not only want to let the service offering be affected by the usage, we also want to be able to adapt it to the technical configuration. If I turn off the filter here again and scroll down here, we'll see that we actually by default have a gasket checkup service included in our offering as well here. But this service may include the exchange of a number of different spare parts, gaskets that we need to replace in the engine, in the transmissions, etc. And these different spare parts may differ quite a lot in price. So maybe we want to have the price affected depending on what type of configuration we have. So depending on, let's say, if I go here and change the gearbox, maybe this gearbox, oops, should put on the filter here so we only see the changes. Maybe this gearbox here, of course, it will have technical impact on the configuration, but it will also mean that we actually now still get a gasket checkup, but we get a different version of the gasket checkup, maybe including different spare part kits, therefore a significantly different price than the initial one. In the end, we of course typically also would allow the user of the configurator here to actually go in and tailor the services itself manually, even though these are our recommendations based on the input, the expected usage, the technical configuration. Maybe within some boundaries, we would still allow the customer to go in and do changes. So maybe they still prefer maintenance intervals of 2 months, and maybe they do not want the rubber parts checkup and replacement service. So they would be allowed to do those kind of manual changes. However, so far, we haven't really seen anything new here. Everything that I've done here is all fully possible without the subscription functionality. So the difference comes when we start to look at the way we handle the pricing part of the services. So two things happen. One thing is that even though we have, as mentioned in our bill of material, in our configuration result, we have the services here. These services are actually excluded from the price execution. So I don't have these services as part of the traditional price model execution. Instead, what happens is that when I save my configuration here, these different services will be listed in a dedicated contract panel that we now have available on the solution object. I have put this in a separate tab in this demo. So in here, we have this contract panel, and this contract panel will then list all the different services that we have included in our solution, including listing the names, start and dates of the contracts, the subscriptions, and the total values for each of these subscriptions. Now, clicking on any of these items will launch the edit contract panel. And if I click the edit button here, I will be able to do some editing as well. First of all, I have up here in the left top corner, I have the total contract value that will continuously be updated as I do changes. I have the possibility to change the contract length, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 years. If I change that, you will see that we add an additional year to the subscription period here, to the contract length. I can, of course, also change the start date of the subscription. So if I expect to sell this sometime before the summer vacation. Maybe June should be the starting month instead. I will have also a summary here of the annual contract value, so calculated based on all the different subscriptions. I'll see what is this contract worth every year over the period here. Then for each of the subscriptions we have in our solution, I will have a row here in the contract panel where I can do some editing. Basically, we have three different types of subscriptions supported in this new functionality. We have one-time costs. Let me see if I can find one here. We have the warranty here, which is a one-time cost. Generally, for one-time cost subscriptions or services, you will be able to change the price of it. So I can change that, or you can change the discount, add a discount on top of that price to do so. And the second type of subscription we have is recurring subscriptions, either monthly, quarterly, half-yearly, or yearly subscriptions. For a recurring subscription, we have a bit more functionality. First of all, for such subscriptions, the different periods, the time aspect come into play. So here you will have the ability to have multiple periods over the contract length. So we can add a new period here to our subscription, and we can change the price of these subscriptions individually. So I can ramp up or ramp down the price however I want to do this. I can of course also change the dates here. So maybe we want this to be only the first year and let the other one be the second year, or 1.5 years, I guess it is. On top of that, changing the pricing, you will also be able to do some separate or independent discounting on top of this in separate periods. So I can have discount periods here. Let's say I want to have a discount period just for the first year. Maybe we want to give this was not the first year. We'll go 1 year back. Then we have 1 year. Maybe we want to give 50% discount for the first year. Then that will be affected only for this part, not for the second part of the first period of the subscription. The third and final type of subscription we have available here is usage-based subscriptions. And let me see where we find that. There is one here called for roadside truck pickups. Actually, this subscription we have here, or this service we have here, actually both have the recurring subscription, a quarterly subscription, and on top of that, a usage-based subscription. So here we pay a quarterly fee to have this service available, but on top of that, each time you will actually have a pickup of your truck by a service vehicle, there you will pay a fee of $100 per time. You can change the price here, just like you can change the price of the quarterly subscription, and you can add again additional periods, change the period length, etc., just like you can do with the recurring subscription. On top of the changing the price, adding discounts for a usage-based subscription, you will also have the possibility to actually do some estimate of how much usage you will have. This is not something that will actually be included in the contract value. It will just be used to do some estimates. So we can do an estimate here, say that we expect to have the truck picked up 10 times during this first period. And then we will have an estimated usage pricing of $800. And if we add, let's say, 5 in the second period here, it will be an estimated price of $500. When I'm happy with my changes, happy with my contract setup, we can save our settings here and close the panel. Now, again, of course, the table here will be updated, and I will have the possibility to go ahead and generate a service contract, because all the information that I have here in my contract panel, is of course also available for the document generation. I've set up a very simple basic document here. This is of course just an example document, and you will be able to tailor your document to the look and feel and information and structure that you like. But what is important to understand here is basically the information that you have available in the contract panel is also available for the document generation, including all the names of the services. For the individual services, you will have the IDs, the subscription periods, contract values, both for on the service level, but also for each individual period and the different charges that you have available. So all this information that we saw on the contract panel is also available for the document generation. And this is also important in terms of the next steps here, because as Per mentioned, this is really where the scope of the CPQ functionality ends. And from here on, at the sales order creation, other systems, subscription management systems will take over. But all the information that we have available in the contract panel is also available via API, and we can hand over this information to such a system for the execution of the subscription or the subscription management part. So this is also where we conclude the demo of the front end, the functionality of the subscription pricing. Let's instead have a look at the concepts behind it and how we set this up in the CPQ administration tool. But first, one single slide here about the concept. What you see here is the basic relationships between the different elements in our product modeling. We have on top the product model itself, consisting of some assemblies with positions that can be realized by modules. And for each module, we will have a number of module variants that can have parts and costs and whatnot. What is new with subscription pricing is that we now have a setting on the module called service. We can actually mark a module whether this is a service module or not. If we tick this box, two things happen. First of all, any module variants of this module type that is included in the bill of material will now be excluded from the price execution, just like we showed you before. The second thing is that now, when this is a service module, we'll have the possibility to start adding subscription charges to a module variant. So when this module variant is in the bill of material, these charges will then appear in the contracts panel on the solution object. Let's go into Tacton CPQ administration and see how this is all set up. I'm now in the Tacton administration module. I have a ticket here prepared for the webinar. And as you saw from the slide here, the subscription functionality is very closely related to the product modeling part. Therefore, we also find a new tab on the product modeling section called subscriptions. Because when we start our setting up subscription pricing in Tacton CPQ really begins by defining the different charges that you have available in your business model. You can see that we have here all the different types of subscriptions that we saw before: maintenance, gasket checkup, fuel economy driving, trainings, the roadside pickup, etc. We have different types: one-time costs, recurring charges, monthly, yearly, quarterly, and the single usage-based one. We can add a new one here just for demonstration. We will, of course, give it a name. And then you can choose between the three different types: one-time costs, recurring, and then the period length, or usage-based. That's the basic three types we have. If we select this one, keep it with the monthly. For all of them, you have different models to pick from, subscription models. It can either be a flat rate, or it can be based on a multiplier, multiplied by some value. It could be number of licenses, number of users, or like in the example with the truck pickups, it can be the number of pickups per year or something like that. If we just leave it with the flat. If I select any of the multipliers, either the editable ones or non-editable, basically meaning can I change this in the contract panel or not, and then I will have the possibility to select between a number of parameters, and we'll come back to that. But you will have to define what parameter you can multiply your subscription with. Let's just leave this one with flat. The parameters are kept in the second tab here, and a parameter can be all kinds of things. It can be, like, say, it could be a number of licenses. It can be of type static, meaning it could be a number. I, by default, always include 10 licenses. I can manually override that later in the contact panel, or I can get the information from context, either from one of the other objects in my structure, from the solution, from the opportunity, from the configured products, i.e. also something that comes from the configuration results, something that I have calculated. Let's say I've calculated an expected performance value from the configuration, let's say number of horsepowers in this vehicle. I could actually set up a subscription that would be price per horsepower instead. I would just have to find the right attribute value here, and then this could be used to multiply my subscription price. The final tab here in the subscriptions is settings, which basically just gives me the ability to set the default contract length. We saw that when I started the contract panel, it was a 3-year contract, but I could default it to something else. Now, having defined all my charges, the next and final step of setting up subscription pricing is basically to start connecting these charges to module variants. So we can go to the modules here, and let's take the pickup service module and take a look at that. You can see, first of all, that we have 2 variants here. And if we take a look at the settings, you'll see that here we find that service setting. Right now it's set to yes. And it's actually also locked right now because since I already have module variants in here with connected charges, I should not be allowed to change this setting. If I really wanted to, I would have to remove those connected charges first. Then I could set it to no here. But we don't want to do that. I just want to check that this is yes. And because this is yes, we'll see that if we go to any of the variants here, I will have this module variant charges panel available. Of course, for the non-component here, I probably don't want to add anything. But if we take the other one, the actual service module variant, you'll see that we have already 2 connected services attached to this particular module variant, meaning that when this appears in the bill of material, these 2 charges will be added to our contract panel, the usage-based subscription and the recurring quarterly subscription. We can add a third one here because we can connect as many charges as we want to any module variant. Let's call this demo again and use the new demo subscription. You can pick any of the other subscription or charges that we have defined here, driver's training, maintenance, or whatever. And you can see that the field name here changes depending on what type of subscription we're talking about, whether it's a monthly subscription, a one-time cost, or usage-based subscription. Now, the demo subscription or charge we created was a recurring monthly subscription. Therefore, it says price per month. We add a price, maybe it will be 10, let's say, US$ per month, and then add this charge to our module variant. Now, this is basically the way you set it up. And just to show what happens now is that if we take a look back at the solution that we demoed before in the front end and just refresh that because it will indicate that we have an update to the product model, since we just changed one of the module variants. And if we update it, we should now also, because we have this particular module variant in our configuration, we should also get the new service subscription as part of our contract. So let's go back to the service agreement tab here and click any of the items here. And if we take a look at the roadside truck pickup service, you'll see that we have here now the original pickup service, quarterly subscription, and then the newly created demo subscription, the monthly subscription of $10 per month. So with this, we concluded the demo of the new subscription pricing functionality, both in terms of what functionality is available from a user perspective, but also the basic concepts and how this is set up in the administration module. Now we will hand the floor over to questions from the audience. Is there any questions in the questions panel?
And then we have a question here that is saying, so what is the advantage of configuring service pricing in CPQ? So why aren't you doing that on another system? Why are you using CPQ for that?
Well, I can start answering that, and I think partly of what Morten showed is that when doing the configuration, it's actually when you're configuring a complex product, it's only there you have the connection between the product, a highly configurable product, and the needed services. And if that is built into the configuration model, you can tailor a service contract or a contract of services associated with that specific to that product. And if that is done in a later stage, you have to recreate that configuration based on the outcome. So it's a shortcut to be able to do that in the same flow, and you can actually do it while doing the original configuration. You can get the service and subscription configuration up at the same time. So it's ready basically at that point.
Okay. I think that is a good answer. And then also, Per, a question for you. At the beginning in your presentation, you mentioned that when you think about is everyone moving to a subscription economy, you said that this depends a little bit on the industry and product and part of the value chain. Do you have an example for a product or industry where they will probably move to subscription economy faster than others?
Yeah, I would say if for all manufacturers that make a product that is used by a customer to produce value directly, I think subscription on the product level is possible. However, if you are doing components that goes into machines, that maybe goes into machines that then creates a product that creates the end customer or the products going forward, it will be much more difficult. So, example, if you make electrical motors and these electrical motors goes into a production line product, it's difficult for the supplier of the electrical motors to sell that as a subscription, because it's built into a larger machine combination. But there are, of course, examples that if your product is the core product in this flow, of course you can have a subscription on, for instance, a wheel bearing or a pump as well, even if it's included, if that is the wear and part that is used over time. So I think we will see a shift over to more subscriptions on product level. We already have a lot of subscription on services and consumables and spare parts. And I think the first step is to integrate the sales of the capital equipment with the associated services, and also there there is a big step to take for many companies to get that link, to get the correct service defined when the product is configured.
Okay. Good, thank you, Per. Then I have a question here that came in from Joachim at Volvo, and he said, "Thank you for a very clear and hands-on walkthrough." So thanks to you, Per and Morten. And that was exactly what he was hoping for. Could you maybe touch a bit more on how the sales rep sees the one-time versus recurring revenue, cost, and margin? And Morten, maybe that is something that you can answer.
So how they see the difference between one-time cost and recurring?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah. Generally, I mean, you see the in the contract panel, you see all the different recurring contracts or the recurring subscriptions summed up per annual period. So for each year, you'll see what is the contract value for that year, whereas the one-time cost, they will only appear in the first year of the contract. So of course, if it's only a 1-year contract, it will be the same thing. You will not see the difference. It's only when we start about a multi-year contract, you will see a difference between the two. You can of course also consider whether you want to have one-time services as part of the subscription pricing functionality, because there's no time aspect to it. So maybe you want to have that as just a part of the standard or traditional price execution. That is, of course, also perfectly possible. But if you want a clean cut between the service part and the sort of the capital equipment, then I think it's neat to have it part of the subscription pricing. Although, it's not. There's no real period link to the part.
But we can also say that, I mean, we are separating the bill of material and the quote for the capital thing from the subscription contract. So there is the main split, and then within the service contract, you can split it into, as Morten said, the recurring things and the one-off.
And with that, I want to say thank you again to Morten and to Per for sharing their knowledge and presentations, and for all of you for joining, and hope to see you with another webinar soon.